Story 1. When I used to do a lot of long-distance cycling, I would do some leg training in the winter to be ready by spring. One time, after completing a workout, I couldn't get up. My legs just stopped working. It was quite frustrating. Story 2. That moment when your knee unexpectedly gives out while taking a step is even more concerning when you are around others. Story 3. Body hair. As a man, I would love to have a hairy chest and the option to grow a beard if I wanted to. However, for genetic reasons, I cannot. I feel unfortunate in that regard. From the waist down, I resemble Sasquatch. I have thick, dense hair on my legs and pubis. My feet are fluffy, and I have a ridiculously hairy backside. But no beard. Story 4. When I became aware of my mortality. In my childhood and youth, I had no care for it and regularly did reckless things like walking along the edge of a 6-story roof. I think I was 30 when we were in a friend's childhood home backyard. We climbed a tree with a large limb extending out over the porch roof. He stepped across 1, 2, 3, and I went to follow. As I raised my foot to step forward and look down, I stopped. I worried I could fall and get hurt, and I couldn't move forward. I watched as he easily crossed 1, 2, 3, but I couldn't do it. I had to climb back down. I've been aware of my mortality ever since. Story 5. The first time I realized that I couldn't trust a fart was when I was younger. A fart was a sign that a bowel movement was imminent, so I could pass gas with ease and peace of mind. Now that I'm older, the bowel movement often takes precedence, making it difficult to determine whether I am safe to pass gas. Story 6. I had a particularly enjoyable weekend getaway, but I had to cut it short because my right leg felt strange, slow, and wobbly. My arm also felt a bit shaky. It was unusual since I was in good shape, so I went to the doctor to get some tests done. Unfortunately, I learned that I have Parkinson's disease. Story 7. Mine is a mystery. When it happened permanently for a guy I fell in love with, I say his name involuntarily. Imagine Tourette's, but it's actually the orgasm causing involuntary movements and speech. It's unrequited love, and I dislike that I say that guy's name without my consent. I really consider it my body betraying me. Story 8. Just 2 days ago, I was doing easy bar curls and apparently slightly turned my head the wrong way, which pulled something in my neck. I still can't look up. Sneezing has also become a dangerous activity as I get older. Story 9. Some of the ladies here will know what I mean by this. When you have your period, you feel kind of terrible anyway. But then you suddenly get a sharp, blinding pain in your lower back for absolutely no reason for a few seconds to a minute. It's your body saying, you know how you feel bad? You thought you were getting lucky and feeling okay this time? Guess again. Story 10. Over the last 5 years, I have experienced various forms of acid reflux. Some episodes were acidic while others were not. I can no longer eat the foods I enjoy that trigger these episodes. Story 11. I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling this way. It's really important to talk to someone who can help you. Story 12. Never. It has reliably carried my brain around for over 50 years, and I am amazed every day that it keeps going, feeling both amazed and grateful. I do not always love it. It is painful in places and not particularly good-looking, but it is genuinely good to have. Story 13. A lot of times, the most horrible experience thus far started in the beginning of September 2024, when I had a migraine. The next day, I woke up with vomiting and intense nausea that has not stopped since. I am now on a waiting list to see a specialist to determine what is happening because my general practitioner is at a loss as to what it could be, as nothing has helped. Story 14. I vomited shortly after taking my dosage of medication. I'm not going to drink it, so I just wasted my dosage and money. Story 15. When I had a stroke 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with vertebrobasilar insufficiency, which is the hardening of an artery in my neck. This condition leads to a lack of blood flow to my brain. I can't work or exercise and am limited to an hour of physical activity each day, after which I feel exhausted for hours. Before this, I was working out twice a week and doing regular cardio. Story 16. Diagnosed with epilepsy years ago, I often find it challenging to go a whole day without feeling betrayed by my body and mind. My memory, freedom, and independence are affected. Each time I wake up, I wonder what happened. I find new bruises, broken ribs, head wounds, and a bloody tongue. Despite taking multiple medications that are ineffective, I still experience all the harsh side effects. I feel betrayed at every turn. Thank you for joining me in this difficult moment. Story 17. First, infertility due to polycystic ovary syndrome. After multiple rounds of in vitro fertilization, I finally became pregnant. Unfortunately, I experienced many severe side effects. The baby arrived 4 weeks early but is a happy, healthy boy now. It was worth it, but I would never want to go through that again. Story 18. I found out the hard way I can push myself so hard it causes my knee to give out. That's the most light-hearted answer I can think of. Story 19. Nearly every time I stand up from sitting or crouching, I experience low blood pressure. My readings consistently show 80/50, but doctors simply suggest drinking more water or consuming more salt, even though I already maintain healthy hydration and electrolyte levels. Story 20. I was in a silent classroom during quiet reading when my stomach made a loud noise that sounded like a fart. People turned to look at me. I was just digesting breakfast. Story 21. This week, on my right side, I have a carpal flare-up in my wrist. My shoulder has an impacted nerve. My knee has lost its feeling. My ankle, which I have broken twice, is acting up because my knee is moving strangely. It's as if half my body is failing and the other half didn't get the memo. Story 22. I became quite ill in high school. I experienced migraines and took ibuprofen without realizing how it could harm my stomach lining. It took several months after the onset of gastritis and ulcers for me to understand what was happening. During that time, I felt I had lost control over many aspects of my life due to several family deaths and significant stress. It's challenging when life becomes difficult, and then your body also lets you down. A once unnoticed organ suddenly causes discomfort. Food, which used to be one of my greatest comforts, became one of my biggest sources of pain. Now, it feels like a distant memory, yet I have developed a deep fear of returning to that stage in my life. Story 23. When we were in the act, I was doing well until my back and knee joints cracked, so I can't continue. Story 24. I have almost no eyelashes. I can literally count them, and they are short and thin, probably 3 millimeters long. I went to get extensions, and they said they couldn't because there is not enough base to work with. Story 25. I rarely got sick or had any issues, so I was proud of my immune system. In my early 30s, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. Story 26. Having neurofibromatosis comes to mind. Tumors grow on my nerves. Essentially, I am not receiving the protein that regulates cell growth, resulting in uncontrollable nerve cell growth. Every day is painful and I have grown accustomed to it, but some days my legs hurt so much that I can barely walk. Story 27. The worst was when I tried to push through a workout while feeling a little unwell, and my body just gave up halfway through. Story 28. Chafing during ranger school. I thought I was about to start bleeding during the Florida phase. The chafing was that severe. Story 29. I used to be very active and into fitness. I went from working out 4 times a week, daily dancing, and playing sports to not being able to walk for 3 months after experiencing 5 slip discs. Ever since then, I have never fully recovered to the level I was at before. It was extremely frustrating and disheartening, and it took me a long time to accept that these new, gentler workouts were still beneficial. The next challenge I faced was when I developed a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It has been a continuous struggle with stomach pain and bloating, but the worst part was losing control of my weight. At its peak, it definitely brought back old frustrations. Story 30. Golfing with friends on hole 7, I didn't realize it, but I had a norovirus. I trusted a fart while wearing white shorts. Story 31. I got terribly sick with a high fever, sore throat, and minimal ability to function 12 hours before my annual school choir, where I was one of the few people who could sing without sounding like a bunch of croaking frogs. Story 32. When I got a nosebleed while sleeping, I usually experience this when I'm too tired or too hot. We were resting in an air-conditioned room, so why am I bleeding? I am confused. One time, I got a nosebleed while sleeping on my back, and I wondered how the blood could still spill out from my nose in that position. Story 33. I was carrying a couch when my legs gave way, and I hit my head on a metal bin. I had to lie down. Story 34. If you count my brain, it's every day of my life. Outside of that, my knee once decided to completely buckle inward. I was just standing to look over the crowd, and it folded. Without insurance, I had no idea how bad it was. I had to buy a brace and crutches, and it didn't fully heal for months. I'm not saying I had an ACL tear or anything, but something happened. At 40, I developed an autoimmune disease. It's not bad, just plaque psoriasis. It's pretty mild compared to what I've seen online, but it still sucks. I have all these problematic areas on my body, and I always have some minor open wound because I scratch them without thinking. Plus, it's just kind of gross how much dead skin I shed. Story 35. Every time I had to be around my mother-in-law, I would catch a horrible cold the day before. It was tough because I was miserable on my children's birthdays, as my body was stressed out just because of her presence. Story 36. That first time I tried to pass gas and ended up soiling my pants instead, halfway to the store while walking. Good times. Never trust a gas release, all I can say. Story 37. My body decided to become seriously ill if I eat gluten, which I had been consuming without issues for 19 years. Story 38. I experienced kidney failure after a case of strep throat. Many years and a transplant later, everything was going well until my lab results began to show irregularities. Turns out I now have chronic, incurable leukemia on top of it all. I felt completely let down by my body, not once but twice in a significant way. Story 39. When I got really sick and couldn't keep up with things I normally could, it was frustrating when my body just gave out. Story 40. I had been a horse rider for 6 years. Then, unexpectedly, my right femur started popping out of my hip socket whenever I rode. I had to stop my horse and wait for my leg to slowly slide back into place before riding again. I don't know what caused it, and it hasn't happened since I stopped riding. It really hurt, though. Story 41. I had shoulder pain after lifting one day, and it wouldn't go away. X-rays showed that the acromioclavicular joints in both my shoulders were eroding due to lifting. Story 42. I was doom scrolling on the toilet one Saturday night. I was probably sitting for 30 minutes, and unknown to me, my legs had fallen asleep. When I tried to stand up, I collapsed almost immediately. It was hilarious. I fell so hard that I woke my parents up, and they came rushing out all panicked. Story 43. When I returned from India and tried to eat fruit again, my body violently rejected everything. I just sat in the shower as my stomach found every possible way to expel its contents. Story 44. Most recently, I had a seizure and landed on the hip I am waiting to have surgery on, making it worse. I am not even 40. This has happened to me my whole life. Please send help and some assistance. Story 45. When Little Soju stopped performing at the same level in my 40s as he did in my 20s, it was frustrating. Story 46. I did a 50-kilometer hike last year, and about 15 to 20 kilometers in, my leg and hip joint started to hurt. It got to the point where I was nearly dragging my leg and had to stop at 30 kilometers, as my average speed was decreasing. I planned to finish it halfway through the next day. I have never had issues with it before, and I haven't had any since. I was well hydrated and eating my usual hiking food, but my body decided that enough was enough. Story 47. It might be the most basic answer, but every time I have sex, performance anxiety was always a problem for me. I tried a lot of exercises and tricks, but I think I should have a regular sex life and everything would be good. Story 48. When nothing out of the ordinary has happened physically, I could have had a perfectly normal day. As I walk to the kitchen, one leg unexpectedly gives out, leading me to awkwardly try to play it off as a dance move. Does it hurt? No. Is there any physical sensation at all? No. Is there any reason for it happening? I can't say. I'm not a doctor. Story 49. When I had track and field day, I participated in sprints and the high jump. As I was warming up, I was called to perform my high jump, but I pulled a muscle and struggled in both events. At least I got to sit out afterward on metallic bleachers, exposed to one of the hottest days of that year. Story 50. I swam competitively since I was a child all the way through college. I only ever had one injury from it. I broke my hand, ring finger metacarpal, while gliding easily into a wall, which I had done thousands of times, right before a big race. Story 51. First story. When I was around 14, I was in class and my nose was itchy. Felt like a small, quick sneeze. So as the sneeze came, I let it out. It wasn't a small sneeze. I covered my entire arm. The class went silent. They looked at me, and chaos ensued. It was the walk of shame to the restroom. Second story. When I was around 16, I felt off the whole day. My mouth was feeling slimy for some reason. Once again, I was sitting in class and needed to cough. I started coughing, and for some reason, I threw up. It was a mixture of about 90% water and 10% transparent slime. The whole table was covered, but somehow nobody noticed. I sat there awkwardly with my hand raised until the teacher finally acknowledged me. Yes. Well, I kind of threw up all over the table, as you can see. May I go to the restroom? The teacher looked bewildered. Of course. You don't need to ask for permission when such things happen. All right, cool, thanks. I returned afterward and tried to clean the table, but the teacher told me to pack my things and go home, as it was clear I was not well. Story 52. Hold on to your horses. I once had an interesting experience in a BDSM situation with my dominant partner. During our second session, he stimulated me effectively, but I not only squirted, I also had an accident on the mattress. The nervousness had never affected me in such a way before, but well, things happen. Story 53. I was in prison once because I violated probation and had been moved around until I ended up at a yard that had a lot of exercise equipment. I started to work out because I had nothing else to do. I didn't really hang out with anyone there because I was new and had no one to spot me. I was never very into working out, so I didn't know proper technique. I must have overexerted myself with my legs before this set because as soon as I started to elevate on a squat, my legs gave out like rubber. In front of a group of inmates, I crashed to my knees with the weight stuck on my shoulders. I think I was more injured socially than physically, but it's not like you go to places like that to make long-term relationships anyway. Story 54. Right in the middle of my wedding vows, I got the worst case of hiccups ever. Every time I tried to say, I do, it came out as, I hiccup do. The video is now a family favorite, but I wanted to die right there at the altar. Story 55. I woke up with a random sciatic attack about 2 months ago, and I'm still battling lingering issues in my foot because of it. It hurts to walk because my nerve is still pinched, causing my foot to burn. I'm 29 years old and have lived a healthy and active lifestyle for over 10 years. Story 56. In the last 3 years, I was fit and healthy, going to the gym 3 to 4 days a week and just started a new job that was perfect for me. Then I fractured my lower back and began to fracture my ribs whenever I coughed a little too hard. I also started getting kidney stones. I saw the doctor and discovered that I had a thyroid problem, which took them a couple of months to diagnose. Meanwhile, I've been in the hospital 3 to 4 times a month for my ribs and kidney stones. Towards the end of last year, they finally determined that I had osteoporosis in my ribs and spine. At least now I'm on disability and receiving treatment in the form of infusions to strengthen my bones, as I am able to see the right specialist, an endocrinologist, who is amazing. I'm not fracturing my ribs as much as I was, and the kidney stones have decreased as well. However, I am still experiencing severe pain in my back, making walking difficult, and I have neck pain that causes regular headaches. Hopefully, my condition will start to improve soon. I am just grateful to live in Australia, so all my treatment has been free. I would be in a difficult situation if I lived in a country with declining healthcare. Story 57. I used to be able to squat 415 pounds when I was in peak condition. I went to the gym yesterday and struggled with what used to be my warm-up set. It has only been 3 years since I stopped working out. Story 58. Stretch marks. I swear my skin is more delicate than wet tissue paper. My friends all have children and have no stretch marks. I have no children and endless stretch marks. Story 59. The day I discovered that in a fight or flight situation I freeze. I was doing work experience at a veterinary clinic when I was 17, which was when my anxiety was at its worst. I saw a woman running towards the glass doors, clutching her dog, and my brain said, I should go open the door for her because her hands are full. My body responded, I'm about to panic. The dog was fine. He had an allergic reaction to something the owner knew he was allergic to and had the medication to treat it at home, but he panicked and ran from her house to the veterinary clinic instead. Story 60. I was working at an Amazon warehouse in packing when I went to the bathroom and couldn't finish in time. After 30 minutes, I returned to work with an accident, and I smelled unpleasant. Story 61. During panic attacks, I hated not being able to stop my body from trembling. I don't have them anymore, but it was a rough time. Story 62. All I want is to grow a full beard. It's patchy, but it's slowly getting better. Now in my 40s, I find that most people have connections. I already have a baby face when shaved, and people often guess my age to be at least 10 years younger. The patchiness of my beard makes me look even younger. Story 63. When I was young, I never drank water. Soon, I suffered from a kidney stone. Now I only drink water. The lesson was learned. Story 64. I remember every time in school when I had to sit cross-legged during assembly, my legs would go completely numb. Everyone would stand up and leave, and I would still be sitting on the floor, embarrassed that I couldn't move. Story 65. I was working out with a personal trainer doing cardio. My heart rate reached 200, so she had me get off the treadmill to switch to weights. While I was on a machine, I suddenly froze. I realized I was about to be sick, but I couldn't move a muscle or even warn my trainer. After just 3 seconds of being frozen, I ended up being sick everywhere. I was able to move afterward, but it was extremely unsettling. Story 66. I faint when I see someone else's blood. Growing up, I wanted to be a paramedic, but my sister had a bloody nose once, and I fainted. To this day, seeing other people's blood still makes me feel faint. Story 67. When it was decided that I needed to be lactose intolerant, I want my body to understand that I need cheese and ice cream in my life. I want to enjoy them without facing consequences later. It feels somewhat unfair, if you ask me. Story 68. I had a dramatic incident in the parking lot of my apartment complex. I experienced severe diarrhea that went all over my shorts and splattered onto my feet. There was no mistaking what had happened. I needed 3 buckets of water to clean the mess from the asphalt. In that moment, I entered a new chapter of my life, and it was not a positive one. Story 69. One time, I was taking a long walk home, covering 13 miles. About a quarter of the way through, I was chased by 4 stray dogs. Adrenaline kicked in, and I somehow outran them, although I felt them close at my feet and worried I might trip. After I got away, about 5 minutes later, I could barely walk. My hips could no longer lift my legs. This was before ride-sharing services and cell phones, and all my family was out of town. Thankfully, there was a nice bus bench nearby where I sat until a bus arrived. It must have taken a few hours, but I looked like I could barely walk when getting on the bus. I was extremely sore for about a week. Story 70. When it decided that it would give me not 1 but 2 autoimmune diseases that affect my liver, my body believes my liver is evil and must be destroyed. Story 71. I had to make a 3-hour drive. I sat on the toilet, but nothing happened. My body said, "It's okay. I don't have to go." Guess what happened 30 minutes later? Story 72. When my wife's father was dying and we were his main caregivers, my heart decided to give out. I was prescribed 6 weeks of rest because walking at a normal pace or for more than a few minutes at a time could harm my heart. During this time, my wife was taking care of her dying father and me. The timing could not have been worse. Story 73. I couldn't breathe once. I don't know if it was a panic attack. It might have been my brain. Anyway, it was very scary. Story 74. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a connective tissue disorder, which means my joints can occasionally pop out of socket. One time, while my husband and I were in a doggy-style position, my hip dislocated and my whole leg went numb. I tapped out, put my hip back in place, and encouraged him to keep going. He asked, "Are you sure?" It's a funny memory for me. I'm so accustomed to dislocations and subluxations that they no longer bother me. Story 75. After seeing what everyone else is going through, I feel grateful for the slight tears in the cartilage of my left and right knees. Story 76. My body has never truly betrayed me. Instead, everything I do comes with a price. Staying up late makes me feel terrible. Working manual labor leads to back pain. Using drugs results in withdrawals. Stretching helps me feel better, and eating healthy makes me feel good. I try my best to keep things in moderation now if I ever decide to do certain activities again because I'm beginning to understand that the body is all we have in this life. Story 77. Right now, on the third day of my calf tattoo, I am in Brazil. The first 2 days were fine, but today is difficult. Story 78. With polycystic ovary syndrome, it can feel overwhelming. Imagine never losing weight despite being more physically active than your friends, because your body has insulin resistance. Imagine being called out for having extra facial hair due to hirsutism, while your mother constantly complains that you don't clean well enough because you have a dark ring around your neck caused by a skin darkening condition known as acanthosis nigricans. On top of that, you deal with an embarrassing amount of dandruff caused by hormonal eczema, which drastically improved after starting birth control to increase estrogen levels. After years of missing periods, doctors inform you that your chances of having a child are almost non-existent. Story 79. In my first week of high school, I was sitting right at the front of the school hall during assembly, and all the teachers looked down at us on the stage. At the end of the assembly, my legs felt like they had pins and needles, so when we needed to stand up, I just collapsed back down. Because of the pins and needles, I couldn't stop laughing and was falling all over the place, unable to stand up and giggling uncontrollably, while my new teacher stared down in judgment. Story 80. I once became allergic to toast for a whole year. I would get heartburn as soon as I ate certain types of bread, especially toast. Then it disappeared, and I had no problems again. Story 81. Also, my body often betrays me in dreams. For example, I might get into a fight and swing hard, but none of my punches land. Story 82. When I tried to say sorry to my mom, I was standing at the door of her room, and I just needed to step in and say, "I'm sorry," but my throat closed, making me turn around and walk back to my room. Story 83. Every time I start crying over something that doesn't really matter to me, I feel like I have no control over my emotions. Story 84. It could be when my body decided to end the pregnancy 8 weeks early, or when my back went into spasm for 3 months, making it impossible to be still without pain, or when I was faced with a cancer diagnosis. No, it was when my body decided it could no longer tolerate lactose. I must choose between living a miserable cheeseless life or suffering digestive distress for the rest of my days. Story 85. When I developed autoimmune intolerances, which are similar to allergies but slightly different, to 3 foods, 2 of which are basic staples in any normal diet, it affected me for a long time before I discovered what the problem was. I dislike having a limited diet. Story 86. I experienced muscle weakness in my legs and arms for approximately 9 months last year. By the time I consulted a neurologist, my condition was beginning to improve, and I never discovered the cause. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.